getting crazy, baby, chill. Don't medicate, just meditate. You waking up now, well, baby, you hella late. Educate, look at what's going on, let it resonate, accelerate. Find your inner hunger like you never ate. Agenda is to push the hate, separate and segregate. Don't celebrate quite yet, the storm is coming, Q, for heaven's sake. Violence that they demonstrate, instigate and penetrate. The values of our country and our God is what they desecrate. My fighters ain't no featherweight, pulling out the seams of the fabric that they fabricate. They feed us lies, manipulate, intimidate through fear and force, forcing us to sit and wait till we come together, congregate, and then we liberate. Praying that you give me strength to find some love amongst the hate, marching on these streets of blood.
Welcome back to the Tim and Steve Show. I am Tim Beard.
I'm Steve Morris.
Steve's back.
Back.
And we're sitting down with Jeff North.
Good morning.
You're running for Selectman this year.
Yes, I am.
And I had interviewed Doug on Friday, or last week, now I don't remember. It all blends together. I was supposed to do on Friday, but we had an issue here with the heating situation. So, but you, Doug Ring, Bert Spalding Sr., and then Barry Connell, who's in the position now, is running for re-election, and Herb Teller.
Correct.
So 5 of you, choose 2. I really emphasized that the last time I did an interview there with Doug, because I'm like, it seems like people don't get the concept sometimes choosing 2 people. It's like, yeah, choose 2, yeah, choose 2. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, why you decided to run.
Well, I have been involved in Newport and through business ownership since 1994, and I came here because I liked the small town aspect of it. I had spent most of my life in the Upper Valley, living there, and then this business came up for auction, and in '94 I purchased that business. That's across from the Valleys, and then proceeded to I decided I wanted to live in the area, so a house came up for auction in Wendell, which I purchased. And I was there for a number of years, and married my wife, had 2 children there, and the boys got to be a little bit older, and when I say older, I mean like 3 and 5, and we started thinking about school systems and what it was going to mean, for that. And my wife and I discussed and said, we really need to live in Newport. Even though we were very close, it's like, if you want to be able to have a discussion about your town outside of owning a business in it, then you need to also live there, vote there. And so since then, we have lived in Newport, and we live on Main Street, and love the community, get to know the community well, want to continue to do business here. I think it's a really great place to live for a lot of reasons, and some people might think that it's great to live on the lake, but I think it's great to live in Newport. And why I'm running, I guess as I get older, I'm approaching 60, so next year I'll be 60, and my boys are now in college, which starts to free up my time. And I think it's really important, at least it's important for me, to have at least a voice that's more than my vote. And if I have the capability of doing that, or if I have real world experience through running my businesses and what it means to spend money and what those consequences have of spending money, then maybe my voice means something. Doesn't mean I have the answers, but it means that I know what it is to look at something and know that if you spend dollars, I'm sorry.
They're fine.
If you spend dollars here, that has a consequence here. And oftentimes that consequence is to someone. And that someone may be the resident of Newport. And you can't just look at those people as numbers and as dollars. They're humans, and those people, and I hate to just say those people, because it's all of us, right?
Right.
We have lives to lead, and we have vacations we want to take, and so when you look at our discretionary money that we have, you know, yeah, could we put it towards this or that or frivolous things? Yeah, maybe we can, but it has a consequence on the other side of that, which is your quality of life goes down, and you're only working towards you know, paying your bills, and it's a terrible feeling, you know. So in business it's different, because in business you don't just get to push it over onto a taxpayer. When you make a decision in business, it has to have a plus and a minus on it. So if I would love to, in my businesses, go buy, you know, a new $500,000 car wash, that'd be wonderful. But then I got to amortize that, and I got to see, does that work for me? You know, will I be able to do it, or is it going to bankrupt me? In town, if you don't have that check and balance in a government, then what you have is you just say, we want this, and I think they can pay for it. And so those things get done, but maybe that person can't pay for it. So there are very serious consequences to spending money in government. And I think that's why I want to be involved, because I want to see those numbers. I want to better understand that, and hopefully with some of what I've learned over the years, good and bad. I certainly had plenty of failures, and I probably still will, but I've learned from them, and I'm hoping that some of that knowledge will hopefully pass through to this position should I be elected to take it.
Yeah, I think that's I think that probably bothers me and him the most is when people say like grant money, right? Because sometimes people talk about grant money, and it's like it's free money, and yeah, it doesn't come out of the complete base of Newport, you know, as much as your your regular taxes in town. But so if it's spread over the state or spread over the country or whatever, it's still tax money, and that's what gets me. And so it's sometimes it seems like, oh well, we can spend that and it doesn't matter. And it's like, yeah, it does matter. It should be spent with the same consideration as your regular tax dollars do. And you know, because if you try and stretch the dollar, right? Stretch dollar, and we're always trying to do that, whether it's on the school, on the town. There's consequences for things, you know, like we were just talking off air, and we can talk a little bit about now, is like the sewer treatment plant.
Correct.
$28 million. And yes, we have grants for all but $999 million or whatever, or $9,999,000. So, but that's still almost a $10 million grant.
Correct.
That's user based. So just the people that are on the system are going to pay for that. And then what I find so weird is the fact that we all vote for it, though.
Right.
So it's like, so the 60% of us roughly that are on septic get to dictate to the other, you know, because if we all come out and vote, oh yeah, absolutely, that's not going to cost me a penny.
Right.
And it's tough because you have elderly people in town that are they're being pushed out because we can't afford to live here anymore. And it's like, so what are we going to do to fix that? And you know, and I don't have the answers, but I
think people don't have the answers, and so that's going to that's a hot subject.
It is.
But I say it's a hot subject, and yet it's really only a hot subject because I think people are blindsided by it. So now it's been gone to deliberative. It's going to be voted on with really no discussion. So has anyone had a chance to really look at the numbers? Does anybody really know how many bids went out? Does anybody really know, is there a cheaper solution? I certainly don't. And I'm impacted because I'm a big water user in Newport. Yeah. The gym and the car wash. They're big. So where I see problems with things that are like user-based is that someone like myself, someone like Rugers, who's a big water user, you can look at the overall impact that this has on, say, a person who has a family of four living downtown. Average user is 70 gallons a day per person in a house. So if that 4,000 gallon a month number is on the low side, that's fluff.
Yeah, yeah.
But see, I can cut in my business. Rugers probably could cut if they need to. I can put either I can put a different car wash in, so I'm not touchless anymore. I'm not going to use the gallons I currently use. I can also put in a water reclaim. I have opted to not do that because it's about, it's like $70,000 to do that. But if I amortize that out, it's going to pay better for me. Now, all those gallons are going to come out of that number, but the dollar has to be paid.
Right.
So who pays? That number of what people were paying is going to go up because the big users are figuring out how to cut their usage. So that's how I see it. I see it as a problem that needs a solution. I don't think that all the folks that are on septic and wells necessarily should be impacted. But the other side of that is, why do the folks who are on the system have to pay for it over 15 years? It's not fair there either. So it's a really complicated issue that's been pushed into 2 weeks or 3 weeks of contemplation, and it's just not fair. It's way more complex, and you can't do it in a couple weeks, and none of us really know. I would certainly hope that those who are in charge have spent a great deal of time on this, but I don't know that they have or haven't.
It's tough because we talked a little bit about this, and obviously, like, septic is like just what I do. Like, that's what I've done for many years.
Yes, thank you for saving my life.
No worries.
A few times.
So on the on the municipality side of things, I don't know a ton about that huge system and everything, but and I could easily say, I'm sure 4 years from now or a couple years from now, that 28 million will be 32, or it'll just keep going up. Like, right. I get that, but there's only a select amount of people that do these systems, so you don't have a lot of shopping around ability either.
Right.
But it just, and hey, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like 28 million is just a huge amount.
That's a huge number.
That's a huge.
You think of what people build for $28 million.
Yeah, and I get it. A lot of it's grant money, and which, thank God it is, right? Because if not, like, what are you going to tell the sewer people? It's going to be 28 million. You got to pay for that. Like, there's no way.
Right.
And I have no doubt that the town manager's been fighting the powers to be like, listen, we can't afford as a town to do this. I have no doubt that that's happened, and I get it. And this is important. But one thing, I've said this for years, and it's not on any individual selectman or any town managers. This town, for some reason, has always kicked the can down the road on everything as far as upgrades, like water and sewer. They talk about the water lines on, Unity Road are 100 years old. They shouldn't be, because I've done sewer work and I've done work in, almost every town, right? Especially up the Connecticut River Valley, all through here. And every town, every few years, does a project, right? Well, we're going to do this street. We're updating water. Newport doesn't do those.
Like in the way they set up a schedule for paving.
Yes, and so one thing I would say, you get on the board, that would be a very important thing to push. Like, listen, we need a 20 or 30-year system here of, okay, every year we're going to do one road or something to upgrade stuff, because they haven't. And someday, and we're kind of at that point in a way, right? Now it's like 28 million, but I'd said for years, like, Main Street, the sewer pipe's just going to drop, and then they're going to be like, oh, we need $100 million to fix it, because, well, why isn't it so much? Because we never did any maintenance to it. We just kicked the can down the road. And in a way, we're kind of at that point now where we need a whole new system, and it's 28 million, which that's a lot of money for a small town.
Well, and is that a whole new system, or is that a partial rebuild of what we have, and where's the next part of it? So I just think that when people, the public, doesn't fully understand the situation, then they get angry. And it's just a matter of information. So if we're not past the information we need to digest what's going on, and I like to think that maybe, I try to be a little more in tune to some of this, and yet I don't know either. And it makes me uncomfortable, because they can say, it's black or white, but I don't know if it's black or white. Like, why aren't numbers being presented? Like I want to see them. I want to. Like,
so you don't ascribe to just being told that if we don't do it this year, it's going to cost us a lot more money and we're going to pay a lot of fines, so just pay it. Like, that's not the right solution for you as a citizen, and that's part of what you want to change.
Well, right, and I feel like, okay, is 1.5 really not going to be available? Like, now that we know that this is an issue, do we have time to discuss it, or is it really like at the end? So I don't know. I have to, and I think some of that not knowing is coming out of a lack of trust. And for me, that lack of trust came out of some of the line striping discussion, because when you're told that you're going to lose spots because the state's going to redo Main Street, and part of that is striping, and that's the way it is, and sorry. And then when you realize that that narrative is a false narrative, then you wonder what else is false. So now I don't trust this on the water and sewage because I saw it on a small scale, so why do I not think that maybe it's on a large scale as well? And that's really all I'm saying is that as a selectman, I would like to not have things be so behind closed doors.
Right. Transparency.
Transparency.
Huge.
Right. So I don't know what happens as selectmen. You know, I see the meetings, but what is there that happens outside of the meetings? And is there a lot? Is there, you know, I know that I see people walking down to Village Pizza and having lunches together. I don't see the whole board doing that. But what happens in those conversations? And I don't know. I just feel like as a citizen, I want to know more. And so as a selectman, I would hope that I could bring that to the table. You know, so they don't have to happen in contentious meetings in the select board meeting, that they don't have to be drawn out with so much anger. That anger only comes out of lack of information.
It does. It's breakdown in communication. It's on the national level. Like that's more
Absolutely
where I'm comfortable, only because I've only lived here for 4.5 years,
Yeah.
and I was in the federal government for 25. So I have a good understanding, and that's exactly what my issue is all it takes is for someone to not tell you the full truth and then not acknowledge whenever they were wrong. And then
Right.
you lose trust in the whole system.
Right.
And that's what's happened on the national level. And that's what's breaking down all the way down to our town level. So it's like top down, bottom up. I would like to see a change in that. I would like to see openness. I've said it before on this show that, and at the school board meetings, to bring it to us and let us know, because I don't know better than anyone else. Like, you have more experience, and you got to leverage all those different experiences. And so, to me, I'm just following on with your question. I'm not really asking anything here. I'm just pontificating. But that's important from my perspective, is that transparency and the openness and acknowledging if there is a mistake.
It's very weird because I've been like heavily involved for like, well, since COVID, I guess. That's like when me and him got involved with like the school, whatever. And then I've been very heavily involved like this year and stuff, and then the last year, whatever. But like, it was funny because I had issues with the school board and like transparency and stuff because the last administration was not transparent. And so, you know, I ran for school board, same with Steve.
Right.
And Steve and Bill Wilkinson made it. I was, you know, short on votes, and then someone resigned and I got on, and then I ran this year and nobody, you know, ran against me and whatever. So that's how we kind of got involved. And so I was impressed with the select board because there was just kind of open. You could talk about anything. You had the open forum. You had, you know, just seemed like everything was going like it should, right? And then the school had an issue, and then the school like is totally on track now. And now I feel like the select board is all gone downhill, and I'm like, how did this happen? But it's a transparency thing. Just tell people. So one thing that so Jeff Kessler was supposed to come on the show on Friday, and one of the questions I'm going to ask him is, so the mill building on Main Street, $300,000 tax break for 3 years to get them to build that. Well, then he comes to a board meeting and says, well, we're actually getting $700,000 from the state.
School board meeting.
School board meeting, yes.
Right.
He says, well, we're getting $700,000 from Sununu if that project goes through. But I'm like, and I want to ask him, well, how come you didn't just say that at the public hearing? Because if you said that at the public hearing, I never would have mentioned it. Because
Right.
$200,000 over 3 years to build this, which will have a great tax impact for us,
Right.
I wouldn't have said anything. So it's a transparency thing. And I feel like it's getting less transparent down there, and it shouldn't be. And that's why I'm so thankful there is an election next week. And we have 3 new people running. You know, you have the other 2 people running. So there's 5 people you have a choice this time. And oftentimes we don't have a choice. It's only, you know, maybe 3 run for 2 positions, or no one even runs in contest of them. And transparency is such a huge thing. Like, you're going to get things wrong, but at least if you're honest with people up front, and it really comes from your heart, and you're like, hey, I think I'm doing what's right. As far as I'm concerned, if you make a mistake, hey, you tried, because
Right.
none of us are going to get it right all 100% of the time. But when you feel like you're trying to shut people down, or like in the Main Street striping thing was huge. Like, that's what got you involved in this to start with.
It is.
Because we went from, hey, we're going to do this because it's free. The only reason the state was going to do it was because it was free. and we're going to lose all these spots, which is going to affect businesses.
Which they didn't consider fully.
No.
Based off of your presentation is the way that I took it, because before you came and presented all of your work that you had done, and you did a lot of research in a short amount of time. But like the vote was the meeting before that.
Correct.
And I was like, why weren't I feel like if you'd have known the extent of this, you would have been there previously. And I think that goes back to, posting it online, posting it on the town board.
Well,
there's just got to be more ways to get information out there, because like you came in kind of behind the curve,
Yes,
behind
I
the
did.
the 8 ball, or whatever you want to say, because
I came in angry,
yeah.
and
Rightfully so, because I don't
that's-
think like a guy like me who spent in a nonprofit 25 years for the federal government, I had no idea that would cost you, but like it just wouldn't have clicked for me if I'm like, oh, I can save $5,000, I'm saving the taxpayers money, go ahead. But as soon as I heard from the business owners like, hey, you're going to destroy us, I would have said, time out, we need to have another discussion and bring this back up.
And
they
wish,
did,
and
to their credit.
They did, to their credit, sort of.
But they wouldn't have if you didn't come in mad. I
No,
feel like
and-
it just
and-
would have
and-
went.
and come in twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't take. It wasn't the first time.
To me, it was an easy, I
thought
easy solution whenever you said, hey, have you thought about this? And it was very clear that they really hadn't, that it was a free thing versus a
Right.
long-term,
right.
like as a short gain versus a long-term,
Right.
like you were saying before, you got to look at it over time.
Well, I think that another thing that I find somewhat bothersome is that things like that it should be clear to people who are making these decisions. It should be very clear. Why doesn't anyone ever come in? I have never had a visit from a selectman or a town manager, other than Dan O'Neill many years ago, who used to stop by the business and say hi. Why does no one ever come by my business and said, hey, what can we do for you? Because you take away the businesses off of Main Street in Newport, you got a pretty sorry looking town. I'm going to tell you, the arteries into Newport are not the most beautiful things about Newport, because they're a little hurting. Buildings that need paint, that are falling apart, that are, this is our presentation of what people see when they drive into Newport.
Windows with junk piled all up in them.
Yep. And listen, I have some responsibility for that myself. I have the building.
Is that the one I'm talking about?
No, it isn't. But it brings up another thing about business is that properly spending your money in ways like I am fixing up a building. Historic downtown. This is what I'm getting to about the business is in downtown. That downtown is very special, and that's really starting from the church, pretty much coming down to Irving Energy and Dunkin' Donuts. A lot of time, effort has been put into that, call it urban revitalization maybe, over the last 30 or so years. But we lose that, and there is not much left. Like you can lose that pretty easily. And so that's why the parking was really, really important. But yeah, listen, like I said, I think people know, that I own the building next to Village Pizza, and it's an eyesore. I understand that, but I also, for me, the restoration of that building has to be done right, and it's very expensive.
You've been fixing that though. That looks way better than ever did. Like you've been, and the hardest thing too is like, hey, siding's probably not a big deal except half of it's hanging over the river. So
right.
That's not an easy fix.
It's not, and someone shot my window out, and I don't want to put that kind of window back in there. I want to do historic restoration of the front of it. That comes at a great cost, and I won't take out loans. I want it to cash flow correctly. So all the apartments have been redone, the roof's been redone, so structurally it's all good now. It's cash flowing. Now we start attacking the outside, and that's the way that I see government as well. That it's important to be fiscally responsible, as long as you're moving forward. But Newport is really important to me. It's a really important community. I think that these things, these shows, it's changing, right?
Yeah.
We saw it on CNN and Fox recently. Things are changing, and people are coming into these forums instead. There's a way we can communicate this communicating real opinions hopefully without bias. And you can watch it or not watch it. You can tune in or not. If it's not what you like, you don't have to listen to it. But it's not altered by advertisers or large corporate stuff. And I like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like we were talking, me and Steve were talking before the show. I was just, there's like two people that have like said some things lately about like our show, whatever. And it's more about me than Steve, but I found it kind of funny. It's like, hey, well, you can do a podcast, you can get set up and do your own thing. Like, yeah, you're gonna hear my opinion because it's my show, but you're not gonna hear a corporate America opinion. You're gonna hear my opinion as a resident of Newport and someone that cares about Newport. And yeah, I don't like things going on. That's why I'm talking about them. That's why I'm trying to make people aware of them. Is it because I want to destroy Newport? Of course not. I want to make Newport better. That's the whole goal.
Right.
It's why I dedicate so much time to all of this. Whether it's school board, whether it's coaching, whatever it is. It's because I care and I want it to be better. So for those naysayers out there, like, oh, they got nothing good to say. Well, no, it's because people need to wake up and see what's happening and there should be this transparency in government. And, nationally, I don't think any of us are happy. No. But it's hard to change that. That's way up there. In a little town of Newport, it's not going to do that. But you can change your community.
I agree.
You could start there and then maybe branch out from there. Other towns see, hey, look what Newport did. Like, they're so involved.
Right.
It's a place to start. And your voice needs to be heard. And that's what's so important. And that's why it's important to have different people, running for these things and have choices as a resident, as a voter. Because if it's just the same old, that's what happens. It gets stagnant. It just,
Well, I don't know that everyone knows what they're getting into when they sign up for being a selectman.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just because someone says, you ought to run, you ought to run, you ought to run. So they run, and then they get there and they're like, wow, I really have no business to be in doing this, that I don't really know it. And like, it's cool, I ran. I know what I'm getting in for, and I don't know that I'm going to really enjoy it. I know that it's going to be hard, but I oftentimes don't enjoy running my business either because they're hard to do. Like, doing the striping stuff was a lot of work, and there's no paycheck that comes with it.
Right.
This isn't a job, and people need to understand that when you're running for school board or select board or any of these other volunteer, even a chamber or econ or any of the committees that are in town, these are not paid positions. These are people are giving from their heart.
We get $1,000 a year.
That is not paid.
I know. But I just want to make sure everybody knows that. There is a little bit of.
Because someone would be like, well, that's not true. See, they can't tell the truth. Like, they get money.
True enough.
But $1,000 is more of.
I will be not accepting the $1,000. Just so you know.
We all try to give it back to the school in some form or fashion.
I will be doing the
charity.
same.
Yeah, it's tough because like I'm on zoning, which saying that you don't get paid for zoning, and I joined because I had an issue with zoning. Like, this is how most of this happens, right? Like, you decide like you're gonna run because you saw something you weren't happy with the striping thing. I was like, hey, I'd like to be on zoning because I wasn't happy with what was happening with me, and those are tough decisions at times. It's like zoning's really tough because I
was on planning board for a long time.
There's implications and it's tough. And I'm very much like, I believe that it's your property. You should be able to do what you want with it, provided it's not going to cause safety issues for other people. But then things come in and it's like, oof, yeah. But now I'm thinking about other things, like we just keep approving all these housing places. We're going to destroy Newport too. And I keep mentioning this and I can't wait till Kessler comes in. We're going to make sure we ask this question because the housing thing we get that, right? Zoning, it all comes to zoning.
Right,
and
it does.
So we could talk about that a little bit too, and I'd be curious what you think. So the mill building on Sunapee Street has been approved now fully, from what I understand, so that can proceed. That's 70 units. Spring Street is 42 or 43 units, and that construction has began. So that's 113 units roughly.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. And there's still plans for more stuff. If you watch the meetings, and there could be up to close to 200 units if in the next just couple of years, if it all happens, right? You can't grow a town that fast without destroying a town. And I keep saying this to people, but everyone's looking at like, oh, it's just, we have a housing issue. I get that. But Spring Street alone may solve the housing issue on its own. I don't know. Or, so we keep approving stuff. Like, what do we want to keep doing this? To what degree?
I mean, you say you have a housing issue until you don't know if you have a housing issue. So, Upper Valley, which is where most of the jobs are, also has a housing issue, but they're also putting a lot in.
Huge amount.
Huge amount. So when people want to live closer to their work and they live in the Upper Valley instead of living in Newport, and we find that we're building houses that then, what are they calling these?
Workforce housing.
Workforce housing. I see. To me, that's like some term that's like, okay.
Section 8 housing.
It feels that way to me. Like workforce housing feels
It's just
like
another term for Section 8 housing.
you're either building housing or not. People should be working. So it's a very strange name.
Government voucher housing.
Whatever it
all
is,
funded
it's
that way. It's all funded federally. Like,
Yeah.
but
it makes me a little uncomfortable because
Yes.
I remember my first sort of first time seeing how this can happen was in the Upper Valley, and they had built these units. It was back when Landers used to be there, and they built behind there. That would be before you guys' time, but and I can't remember the name of them, but they were called the Boulders, and the Boulders apartments were supposed to be sort of a high-end apartment thing was going in before the hospital, and it didn't take long. They weren't renting, they weren't nice enough, they weren't going for what they'd hoped they'd go for. Then it just became Section 8. So it doesn't take long for things to turn. I always saw that mill building differently. I didn't see it
That's
like it's going to be
workforce
broken
housing.
up.
Yeah, I saw it more like a brewery with
Yeah,
something. I don't know. It just seems like it's a
Brewery.
good space to.
condos.
Yeah, something higher end.
It's on
Right
the
on the
waterfall. It's super cool.
yeah.
Hate seeing it chopped up, but it's economics. It's really none of my business how an investor spends their money. But it is of concern because that will impact the schools.
Well, the skeptic in me says that if we have 113 units opening up, I mean, and we don't have anybody to fill it, it's a perfect opportunity for one of these buses that they keep shipping from down south. Just fill up our Section 8 housing. That's my skeptic. That's worst case scenario in the sense of, because then not only do we have, a large influx of people, but then we have maybe possibly uneducated migrants that
Or just
now show up.
Spanish-speaking people that our school's not equipped to educate, or and that's the thing. People say can't happen, but if you look at any of those projects, those big ones like that,
Yeah.
they're federally funded. They're not fully federally funded, but they're heavily federally funded.
Right.
So you're gonna tell me the feds couldn't say, "Hey, we just gave you $10 million for this, and now we're gonna decide that no, you're gonna do this with it." Like,
We got 80 refugees coming in from country X. May not even speak Spanish. They may speak.
yeah,
I don't know.
you never know.
Whatever.
Like, but like the housing thing, I think White River just approved like a 200 unit place. I think Lebanon just approved another. Like,
Lebanon is approved, yes.
So-
a large one.
we got to be thinking about all these things now. If we just
I
keep adding-
don't like it. I don't like it because I don't think Newport doesn't have anything like that right now. So when you're jamming 70
Correct.
units into one building, that's a different vibe.
Yeah.
That is a whole nother thing. We're not talking about historic buildings that have been chopped into apartments that, hopefully for competitive reasons, people try to fix theirs up so they rent theirs instead of some other guy. Now you're this is a whole nother thing. This is 70 units in one building. That's
On top of each other.
on top of each other, next to each other.
The police
no place to
implications
be.
from it,
Yes, the police implications. Where are they going to barbecue? Where does the trash go? I mean, and of course that's all being the design stuff. But that's another world. That's a whole other thing that we don't have in Newport yet. And now we're going to put a couple of them in. It's
Yeah, because even Spring Street, we don't have any place that's. I mean, the place behind used to be Hastings Garage there on Sunapee Street.
Yeah.
Which I don't remember the name of that place. I don't know if there's 40 something out there. I mean, there's a few out there broken up over a bunch of buildings, but
they're amongst several buildings.
yeah.
It's,
But we don't have any like apartment units like that have 43 or 70. Like obviously it's a huge number, and one of the things too, they came to the zoning board and wanting less than the 2 parking spots required per thing, and we compromised at like 1.57 or something like that, which was kind of comparable to Spring Street. And my whole argument was like, this is workforce housing. So if there's 2 people that live here, you're gonna need 2 cars because there's not community transportation.
Correct.
And, and then they pull numbers out like, well, according to the housing authority, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, that's not Newport. That's Manchester or something, you know what I'm saying? And I think these are things that, if you get on the select board, these are going to be very important for you to be involved with and know, because, and I know I keep asking the question and I don't really get an answer from anybody. How many of these are going to keep approving? How many of these are going to keep pushing? In
It is going to change in Newport.
Yeah.
It is. It's just, do I know if that's for good or for bad? I certainly don't. I don't have a looking glass, for that, and I don't know when you can say yes and when you can say no. If someone goes to put in for a permit and it gets approved and everything is hunky dory, is that any different than the guy who wants to build a duplex? Ultimately. So, it's the areas where you don't have enough parking that you can say you need to have the parking. It's certainly, I guess parking wasn't an issue on Main Street. Suddenly it's an okay issue, for a big building. Parking's always an issue. So yeah, that stuff bothers me, because I see certain buildings like that, and I really had hoped that the mill building would become something special.
Yeah.
Like really special, because it is a special building.
Yeah.
Now, everybody that I bring, that comes to visit me since I've moved here, is like, oh my God, that would be awesome for. Not once did I ever hear workforce housing.
Yeah. And have you ever have you ever been in it?
No, I haven't. I've just seen
It's
through the glass.
spectacular. it's so when Ruger had all of his very expensive vehicles in there,
Yep.
and if you see the flooring and the patina in it, and so you could see that. I could see it as just something special. You carve it into 10 high-end condos. Why do we have to always go for the very bottom of the barrel? Why is that? But we're as a community, we're not going for it, and investors going for it. So they don't see that as the best way that cash flows. And can you stop that? I don't know. Those are tough things.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and that's the thing too. I'm like, because I'm trying to make a decision based on what's best for the town.
Yeah.
But then also, what can I actually make for a decision on zoning? Can I actually tell these people no?
Yeah.
Or am I infringing on their rights?
Correct.
So it's tough, and I feel like there should be some more clarification there. And I've kind of tried to ask for it, because oftentimes they present data, but we never have our own data either. So, and you can take data any way you want. I can manipulate data all day long. Just find a study that fits my narrative, and then you push that. And so it's things like that I think just people need to be aware of, and the boards everyone needs to be aware of the changes, and too much change too quick. Like a business, you grow too quick, most likely you're going to fail, because that's what happens. You got to grow slow. It's if you
end up undercapitalized quickly.
Yes, and it's tough too, because and I think it'll be great if you get on zoning, or excuse me, on the select board, because you have that business sense, and I have that business sense. Now the downside, I'll tell you, is this government thing. It moves really slow, and for me, it's like snap decisions are normal, and I'm sure for you too.
Yeah.
And then you get into the government aspect of things, and it's like, why does this go so slow?
It's like a slow barge.
Yeah. Now
I'm comfortable with that, because I've been.
I try to speed the barge up a little bit, but that's probably one of the frustrating things with it. It's like, why is it not more instant? It just, honestly, you probably should run the town more like a business, because that's all it is a business.
Well, you know how that went in the last administration in Washington. You should run it like a business, and people get thrown under the bus. So it's all hard. But I would say that in the end, that it's all about transparency and discussion, and that will slow down a lot of the infighting. And we have certainly, having gone through COVID, there are people who are still angry, and it bred something. I think that in people, in general, that is going to take a while to weed out. And when you're told to shut your business down in America, and you always thought, at least I always thought, as a business person, as a U.S. citizen, that well, this is America. That doesn't happen here.
Shouldn't.
And it did, and that changed things. It changed the trust. Like, I can never ever trust that my business won't be shut down. That was devastating. Thank goodness for PPP, because I would not be here. And it doesn't mean I like it. It doesn't mean I thought it was necessary. But if you're going to shut people down, at least they threw out a safety net. But it did. I can see it in the businesses. I can see it in the way people act now towards employees. It's different. There's a more of a same thing in the select board meetings, in the BOS meetings. There's just more anger, and I don't know that comes from COVID or what it comes from, but there are things churning, and I hope we can settle it down. And I think that's going to come. I think that will come through transparency, and I think that you are correct. You had mentioned what you just said a few minutes ago to me about a month ago. You said, Jeff, this can start and is more manageable at a town level. That we can't manage it. We can sit here and say, we don't like that politician, we don't like that politician, and we don't like Sununu, or we do like Sununu, or whatever it may be. But that's just chatter, right? You feel like your vote maybe doesn't matter, or it does matter, or some people think theirs really does matter. That's all, not really manageable. But I think that you are absolutely correct that it has to start at the bottom and start working its way back up again. This is like the opposite of trickle-down economics. This is
Trickle up.
Trickle up civility. Whatever it is, it's and I've told so many people that since you mentioned that to me about a month ago. I thought, wow, that's really brilliant. It's where it has to start, and it has to start in a good way. This stuff has to calm down.
Yeah,
it really does. Because
the thing is, like, the people that, I've read an Eagle Times article, and then I kind of trashed on the paper because of the way it was written. I'm like, they made it seem like, oh, just a bunch of, town hooligans showed up and complained at their meetings and whatever. And I'm like, if you haven't had numbers at those meetings for a long time, and I said right at the first meeting that you guys had for the striping thing, I was like, this has been a good meeting, and it went super late, like after midnight.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the first time you actually had to face your residents in a long time and actually answer to them. Because I feel like some people forget, like, you work for the people. So, like, when I make decisions on the school board, me personally, I have to think about the whole town as a whole. That might be something that's great for the school. It's going to hurt the town. Guess what? I'm going to say no, because my role is I represent the whole community as well. And that needs to happen, and it's not. So, yeah, you have 20 people show up that are angry. Well, I can promise you that's just 20 people that took the time to come out or have the courage to come out, because some people don't like the public, they don't want to expose themselves to that potential, blowback from people or whatever. They say, they think at home like, hey, I feel this way, but I don't want to say nothing. So if that's, 20 people show up, it's more, it's not just 20 people in town are upset. No, they just happen to be the ones that show up. Like, you have to talk to your citizens and try to make things better, and just have transparency is the biggest thing. I really think transparency is the biggest thing.
And if you can present the evidence.
Right.
So that's helpful in the transparency. So when people hear that you have a problem, that you've come up with a solution, if they feel part of that solution and part of the problem at the same time, so they see both sides of it, then they say, wow, that is a lot more complex than I thought, and wow, they've really put some time into this, and I didn't realize that it was such a deep subject. Then they feel like you've done everything you can do. And if you don't do that, then they think I'm being bamboozled.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's an easy job.
No.
It's easy to say it from here.
Yeah.
It may not be so easy.
It's a lot easier to sit here and say stuff, and then
Ab-
when you're in a meeting, it's like, wait, what?
Right, you're being attacked. You thought you did the right thing. You obviously didn't do the right thing, and people told me, you're going to think you do the best thing, the best job ever, and then someone's going to come at you, and you think, wait a minute, I thought that was common sense and it made sense to me, and I just got attacked.
Yeah.
And I'm not looking forward to that.
Yeah. And someone told me that it's like you need to be prepared for half the town will disagree with you and half the town will agree with you. And I don't necessarily think the number is necessarily half, but it's probably closer to half than not. And because you make decisions, and yeah, we are all quick to judgment on things. But here's the thing: when I make decisions or I make comments on the show, it's because I have information about it. It's not just some decision. I have some opinion that I'm like, hey, I'm sitting on Facebook and I just read something on What's Up Newport, and now I'm going to put my opinion out there that's full of facts. And no, like I have facts based on information I have. Lots of people talk to me,
Right.
Because I don't bash individual people. Like lots of people like come to me all the time, like stuff. I'm like, I'm not even on the select board. This has nothing to do with it. But hey, okay, tell me, because then in this platform, we'll get it out on this platform about the issue, whatever. But people just want their voices heard and recognized. And then, so when I say stuff, it's no, I've got a letter here from the state of New Hampshire that I 91.8, or I have this, or I have that. Like, it's not just an opinion-based thing. It's like, and so some people I would tell, hey, before you make a decision or before you say something, like look into it a little bit, because it's not as black and white as it seems. It's definitely not as easy.
No,
I don't think that a lot of corrupt stuff's happening in Newport. No, I think it sometimes has the impression of that because the transparency is not there. They just be like, oh, this is what we did and this is why.
Oh, that's not just the transparency. I would say it's they don't accept responsibility when they're called on something that was a bad idea or was premature, like with the striping. Like there's a few people now, to give credit, some of them were like, hey, but then they didn't stop it. Like with your volunteering to do that, there were a couple of select board members that were on board with you and you're on the first meeting,
on
right?
the proposal,
Yeah.
right. Well, I think that,
So I don't want to lump them all together.
No.
but there is some responsibility to the voter too, and so,
Yep.
It's easy to talk about these things and say we get back to the problem with the infrastructure in Newport, that we're in some trouble, right? We're seeing this now in the sewage plant, and a few people over a short period of time are going to pay the price for that mistake, and that's rough. But understand that for a long period of time that some of these things were voted down by the taxpayers.
Yep.
So it's easy to say we should replace X amount of Main Street, every year, but that has to go to deliberative. It has to become more. It has to be voted on and approved. And if you keep on voting it down, you end up with a rec center that's falling apart because you asked for a roof and you asked for a roof and you asked for a roof, and no one ever approved it, and all of a sudden it's rotting, and then you say, "Oh, woe is me." It's not all on the BOS. They're the taxpayer. But with that said, if it's presented better,
Right.
so that people understand it before it goes to vote, if there's more discussion, so that people fully understand that if we don't do these things, we're going to have, something like, okay, maybe we need to put aside, $500,000 a year into future infrastructure, and vote on it and say, look, we can't have this happen again. But there is a voter responsibility, and nobody really wants to spend their money. So you get it. So it's different than it's true power to the people, right? I mean, so in a town, it's very interesting. When I was thinking about that this morning, is that it's not like the federal government where you have Congress who's voting on things. The people are actually, to a great deal, are in control in town because their vote is the money.
Yeah.
Right? Am I wrong in that?
No, actually, very right. Because, we elect people to Congress and they spend your money, and you hope they represent themselves correctly when you vote for them.
Right.
But when it comes to this kind of stuff, any of these bond votes, any of these kind of things, it's 100% we can say no.
Right.
And oftentimes we do say no. And like when our budget came up this year, I'm like, listen, we have to sell this. Like there's no, you have to sell it. So for the school budget, it's the school board's job, and they ask you like to sell this budget. And you have to be like a salesperson, whatever. You have to sell it. You have to show the pros of it. You have to show the cons of it. And you have to do that, or it's just not going to pass, because people normally are just like,
If you
well, no,
agree
I don't.
with it.
If you agree with it.
Right.
If not, they're going to vote it down, right? So the same thing with the Board of Selectmen, with other things like, like the water, the well they want to do.
Right.
It's $3 million of it's grant funded. It's like 500,000. To me, I'm like, that just seems like a no-brainer, because it's certainly going to be an issue down the road.
Right.
The wells that we have now, one's in Unity, And one like Paul's was like, yeah, this makes perfect sense, and it's like 80% or 83% funded. That makes sense. Tougher thing,
but see that was well, very funny, right? Explained.
yes,
So I felt that as a voter, I understand that situation. I understand the money. I understand the importance of it. I understand about redundancy. Like you can't live without water, and it isn't expensive, so the impact isn't not huge.
right.
But it was well explained in a way that was palatable. Other things are not. And that's where I think the trouble comes in. And of course, then you have the complication of you have a school and you have a town, and the people, including myself, sometimes just doesn't understand why they're not one and the same. You know, because I think that the thing of taking out of one pocket and putting into the other is this argument. But
Oh, I got in a whole debate with people about that though, because like that's the way I look at it. It's my left pocket and my right pocket,
Right.
And I get it. It's two different entities, but
Yeah.
it's the same. It's the same thing.
Same end goal.
Yeah, it's the same end goal. It's the same. It's the same thing in that way. And
We have to work together. We have to
yes,
predict and figure out, you know, if it's 0.5 kids per unit or 1.75 kids per unit. Like that's the difference between all of those numbers. Can I just jump in here? Because
Absolutely.
this is probably going to be a hot topic item, and I didn't pre-brief you for this, but we kind of brought it up. So with the rec center, you were opposed to it vocally, right? Or
I would say that is, and I'm happy to talk about that.
I mean, I just
No,
from
it's
my
not-
perspective on it
it's not even a hot subject, and I would say that
like, how would you approach it? Because I feel like last year you were against it.
absolutely, I
And
was
so
against
now
it.
that they've gotten this money from Shaheen
Yeah.
and the donors, how, if you're elected, will you approach that if it falls short of money? How do you foresee that if that
Well, it has to go
comes
to the voters again if it falls short of money. The money has to be voted on because that's what we do. We're in a democracy. So to clarify, being against the rec center, that is
Yeah,
well, it is to understand that because Tim, I didn't know you in particular were for it, and I thought, how in the world is a conservative and Todd Fratzel, and I think, okay, these guys are conservatives, and you know this is probably the largest government program we'll have in Newport. It's government funded health, you know, fitness. That's all it is. It's a huge part of Newport's budget. Outside of the building, if you look at the line item, it's massive. You know, so and we all pay for it. We don't all use it, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. But I was not against it out of my wife and I, out of any kind of a threat that it would you know infringe on our business that we have put onto Main Street. I certainly have. I was on the board for that, and I felt that conversation to a great deal was shut down about how and where it would go, and certain people were just overbearing on that board in a way that I felt that my voice was no longer an important voice. And when it became more and more expensive, they started at it like, let's hope we can do a $1 million gym, and then it turns into over 10, and then they reel it back, and it comes down to 7, and people were just like, this is too much. This is too much. We got to rethink this. You know, and it just felt like after the first time it was voted down, I was like, this is not going in the direction that I foresaw it going in. And I wrote a nice response, and I said, I'm not on board with this any longer. I was on board with it, but it no longer feels right. And I think some of that was through transparency. Again, I felt that there was deception. I don't want to say lying. There was deception going on in the narrative. That when someone says, it's not going to cost any more to run this, and that's being put out to the public, I can't put my name on that because it is clear to anyone with a brain that is going to cost way more money to run. You can have the existing rec center and not worry about cobwebs in the corner and junk in places and leave it be and be okay with it. But you build a beautiful facility like that, that thing's going to have to be spit shined top to bottom on a regular basis. It is going to need a full-time maintenance person to, maintain that property, to mow it, to plow it, to prune it, to clean the windows, to clean every corner of it. And so when you start to push your narrative, you start leaving pieces of it out. Just come out and be honest and say, yes, we're going to need a couple more people to run it. We're going to need some more cleaning. Then it becomes an honest discussion. And I felt that it was not headed that way any longer. And so I just couldn't be behind it anymore. And I also just don't like leaving property behind. So I felt like there was not really an answer for the existing rec center and what was going to happen with that. And I liked it when it was going to be the ambulance garage. I was going to go in there as part of the money, but I felt like that was shifting too. That was just like, yeah, that's where it's going to go. Where was the business plan?
Yeah, that all changed again. Like that's all changed recently. Like,
Right.
So it's like even everything you were selling at the vote last year has changed.
Yeah.
Because now the plan, from what I've seen from the town, whatever, is to put the ambulances and whatever down in the bus barn that we're not going to be in anymore or whatever. And so they're going to redo that and that whole thing. And so it's changed again. And so when you make those changes and you're not very public with it, or you don't come back to the voters, they feel like you're tricking them, or you're not doing something on the up and up, because you said you're going to do this and now suddenly you're not going to do this. And I get it, things change, but if you do it that way, people think you're being deceptive, because that's not what you said, and we see it all the time.
And Mr. Kessler called out the CTE for that, because, and I addressed that months ago at the board.
Right.
But if you're not watching every board member, you don't know. But he came to the board meeting in April and said, also, y'all said you were going to replace the roof, part of the CTE bond, and now it's not on your list to be replaced. What's up with that? I didn't really answer him at that moment. I don't think I did. I think I might have said, well, we've discussed that. But it was a long, lengthy discussion that we had, and I discussed it at the board. But if you miss that meeting, then you don't know it. And
Right.
From his perspective, yeah, the deal has changed. We knew that the deal had changed. I briefed it 8 months ago, maybe, that, we had them core the roof. The roof's got 10 more years. It's now an
Right.
alternative because inflation's gone up so much, we have to cut somewhere. And if I got a roof that lasts for 10 more years, but I can get better education facilities for the kids, what would you do?
Right.
Like, but that's the
Education
transparency
as
that
the
unfortunately, if
transparency.
you don't see it and you're not staying up to breast on it, which he asked the question and I've answered it and I answered it again here, but those are the things that are hard. So then, you look at it, should I have made a summary sheet to put on the school board's webpage, like adjustments to the plan, which I think they can actually find that out there. But like maybe it needs to be more succinct that says, this is what we said before, this is where we're at now, and this is why we are, because, $4 million added, and we're not coming back and asking you for $4 million more because we don't have that kind of money in this town.
Right. Well, I think
Right, so you got to cut
yeah.
somewhere, and
Yeah.
so if the roof can last 10 more years,
then
let's kick that bucket down the road. Maybe we start a fund for a roof replacement project. Put $20,000 a year aside for the next 10 years, whatever.
right. Because
But
we
you know what I
get back to
mean?
that
Like-
discussion again, right?
Yeah,
Of infrastructure. and-
forecasting properly.
Yeah. Well, I think obviously the rec center is a hot subject, and I think that that's part of why people are angry.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the transparency.
Because it wasn't just me; it was against the rec center, and to a great deal there's a lot of voice. People felt they didn't have a voice on it, and so maybe we were the voice of that to a degree. The opposition, maybe, but who's against the rec center? Who's against PJ Lovely? That's impossible. You
Right.
cannot be against that. We have something very special in Newport. I would say primarily in that man, in his love of athletics. I mean, look at him; he's jacked. That doesn't just come because you wake every morning and say, oh, I'm going to eat my Wheaties and go to the gym. It's just natural. His love for the kids. When he goes,
Yeah, those shoes will be impossible to fill.
they don't get filled.
Yeah.
They really don't.
Not to that level. No.
Nope. And so, and I think that's close, so I hate that it gets mixed up when against the rec. I'm against poor planning. I'm against lack of a business plan. You know, it's losing money now. How much more is it going to lose? Where are your projections? And that's the business side of me, and I can never take that away. That's just what I do. I project the money, and then I see where we, that's a big part.
I think the
can we
federal
make it work
government
better?
and all the way down needs somebody like that says,
Accountability.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
let's look at what we're spending. Wait, we only have $10. I can't commit to spending $20 for the next 6 months when I'm only going to have 40. But we still do it anyway.
This is a blue-collar town. This is not a town full of rich people. You may think that there's a lot of people moving in here from out of town, and there's a few, but they bought some houses. This is a blue-collar town. This is,
right.
And it will probably be for, the near future. Especially these buildings go in, it's going to become, it's blue-collar, and that's not a high-income bracket. And these things really affect people financially. They affect me financially. I'm pretty sure they affect you financially.
Yeah, I'm living on a retirement check that I planned out since I was 15 years old, and it ain't going too well for me. I'll have to start learning how to dig sewer trenches and get on his payroll.
So, I thank you for your time coming in today and everything else.
Thank
Do you just have like one last closing remarks you'd like to say to the voters? And
all I can say, I do the best I can do. I've always tried to do that, and I guess in my approach to life, and to try to hear people out, and to keep my personal opinions away from what is rational thought. I would hope is rational thought. I'm not sure where that is these days, and that I would work as hard as I can for the citizens of this town, and not to be it for Jeff North. That it's not about me. It's just about what I may bring in a lifetime of experience to help this. Oh God! Don't say make Newport great again. No, Newport.
Sunshine on it again.
Yeah, Newport is great, and it will remain great. I just think that it needs a little teeny tweak. I really don't think it's that big, and I would like to be part of that process. Should I be voted for and elected? And thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely.
I enjoy talking to both of you.
Thanks for coming
greatly.
Yeah, thank you very much. And so, very important, the vote is next Tuesday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. right at the Newport High School. There's 5 people running for 2 spots. Make sure you vote for 2. And, get out. You can vote for Jeff. Any of the people on the ballot, please come out and vote. We'd like to see some good voter turnout. And there's a lot of warrant articles on there, too, that we're going to talk about on Friday when Jeff Kessler comes in, just to try to get more information out before you vote, because there's a lot. I think there's 21 articles on there this year. So, thanks for watching Tim and Steve Show. We'll see you next time.
Till I see the golden gates, troubadour and troubled souls, one of God's servants. Blades out, cut the grass till we see the serpents.
One day I hope you see the truth. This puppet show stays on because of you.